Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about using a 25-yard zero on your AK-47 and basically what the holdovers are going to be downrange at different distances. Okay, so this is a Romanian Wasser. I upgraded it like I think maybe 6 years ago to this Midwest rail. There's a video on my channel where I actually do the upgrade if you guys are interested. And then I have a Howson 503 CU. This is a 2 MOA dot with a 65 MOA circle. Okay, so I'm using a 25-yard zero, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you guys what the whole, basically what the point of aim, point of impact is going to be downrange, and I am going to also be comparing it to an AR-15. Okay, the reason is because at this point, most people that have AK-47s also have AR-15s. They will typically go back and forth between shooting the two. So you want to be able to have a comparison as you switch from one to the other. How are things going to shift? Okay, so let me give you some data. Okay, and then we're going to go through some of the details where I actually have some targets here where I shot this. So if you look over here with the AR-15, which is in blue over here, okay, with that I'll typically use a 50-yard zero, which will give me my second zero at 200 yards. And then with the AK-47, which is in red over here, I will use a 25-yard zero, which will also give me a second zero at 200 yards. Okay, so let's go to 100 yards and see what happens at 100 yards. So with the AR-15 at 100 yards, I'm 4 inches high, right? That's using a 55 grain bullet. If I'm using a 77 grain bullet, I'm only 2 inches high. Okay, so with the 55 grain bullet, I'm 4 inches high. With the on the AK-47 using 7.62 by 3.9, I am also 4 inches high. Okay, so both of these are 4 inches high. The ammunition that I was testing this out was this Red Army standard. However, when I do it with Tula or Lone Wolf, I pretty much get the same result. Okay? When I use this other ammunition over here, this is actually brass 7.62 by 3.9, and I think this goes a little bit faster. It gives it a little bit more of a rise. Okay? But since that brass AK-47 ammo is not that common, we're not gonna focus too much on that. So at 100 yards with the 25-yard zero on the AK, I'm 4 inches high, which is the same as I normally would be with my AR-15. So that's all good. At 200 yards, basically if I'm aiming center mass, basically point of aim, point of impact, with both of these, basically I'm hitting the chest. Okay, so there's no holdover or anything like that out to 200 yards. With both the AR-15 using a 50-yard zero and the AK-47 using a 25-yard zero, put the dot in the center of the chest, I should pretty much hit in the chest area. Okay? Now, when we get out to 300 yards, we start seeing a little bit of a difference. Okay, so at 300 yards with the AR-15, basically I will typically, with both of these, I'm putting the dot in the face to drop it to the chest. However, with the AR-15, it tends to be more on the mouth, okay? Whereas with the AK-47, it's closer to the forehead, okay? So it's a little higher up on the forehead. So we start seeing a little bit of a divergence here at 300 yards. Both of these are at the face, and if you can't remember, if you put it like in the center here, you're going to drop them into the chest, okay? But with the AR, basically it works out to an 8-inch drop, okay? So with the AR, put it in the mouth, you drop it about 8 inches into the chest. With the AK at 300 yards, it's more of a 12, 13-inch drop. So if you put it like at the forehead, you'll drop it into the chest, okay? So that's at 300 yards. Now, at with the AR, usually from there, I'm good all the way out to 400 yards. Around in the 400-yard area, I'm putting the dot on top of the head, okay, at 400 yards with the AR-15. So as my man stands like this, I'm anchoring the dot to the top of the head, okay? Now, with the AK, I have to do that at 350 yards, okay? So the same point of aim, however, it is closer with the AK-47, right? Because it's a fatter, heavier bullet that's dropping faster. So with the AK-47, at 350 yards, I'm at the top of the head. Whereas with the AR-15, I got to go to 400 yards in order to be on top of the head, okay? Then as we go out to 450 yards, I'm sorry, when we go to 400 yards with the AK, right? 400 yards with the AK, what I gotta do is basically whatever the distance is from the belt to the top of the head, you lift that up, and that's your holdover with the AK. That's at 400 yards, okay? Whereas with the AR and this one, I don't have to do that until I get to 500 yards, okay? So with the AR at 500 yards, okay, belt to head, lift that up, put that over his head. That's your holdover, okay? Now with the, so what we said with the AK, it's at 400 yards, it's half the height of the man. At 450 yards with the AK, it's the full man height. So at 450 yards, okay, basically from the distance that you see from his feet to his head, well, you lift that up, that's your holdover with the AK at 450 yards. So let's go down just the AK side, because it's really focusing on the AK in this video. With a 25-yard zero, at 100 yards, you're going to be 4 inches high. So what that means is, because a lot of times at 100 yards, you can see the face, right? So at 100 yards, if you put the dot here, right, because if somebody's hiding behind a tree, all you're going to see is a face, right? You put the dot in the middle of the face, you're going to hit the forehead. Or if you put it on the mouth, you're going to, hit somewhere right, right between the eyes, okay? Okay, so at 100 yards, you're plus 4 inches. At 200 yards, just put it in the chest. You'll be pretty close to the chest. I mean, we'll have some details. I'll show you in a second. So I think it ends up being like about, with mine, with the one I tested out, it was about 3 inches low. Okay, so if you put the dot here, you're gonna hit about 3 inches low. But for all practical purposes, at 200 yards, put the dot here, you're 3 inches low. You can't tell the difference. Point of aim, point of impact at 200 yards. Practically speaking. Okay, so at 300 yards with the AK, we're basically putting the dot in the face, but kind of at the top of the face, right, on the forehead. All right. At 350 yards, we're on top of the head, right? So on top of the head at 350 yards, and then at 400 yards, your holdover is half the height of the man. So belt to head, that's your holdover. And at 450 yards, it's the full man height, all right? So whatever distance you see from his feet to his head, that's your holdover at 450 yards. Okay, so let me see if I can get this behind the camera. You guys can do like a screenshot of this. Okay, so with the AR, all right, say at 100 yards, you're plus 4 inches. At 200 yards, point of aim, point of impact. 300 yards, you're in the face, but over the mouth. 400 yards, top of the head. 500 yards, half the height of the man, okay? And then real quick, in case you didn't understand me the first 2 times I told you, with the 25-yard AK-47 zero, plus 4 inches at 100 yards. Point of aim, point of impact on the chest at 200 yards. Face to the forehead at 300 yards. On top of the head at 350 yards. Half the height of a man at 400 yards. And the full height of the man at 450 yards. Okay, so those are your holdovers. I'm gonna put this to the side, and now basically I'm going to prove it to you. Okay, not because it needs to be proven, but just because I had some fun shooting, and I just want to share my the day's results. I was actually doing this both yesterday and today, so this is like 2 days of shooting, and also I'm also going to include some information from when I was at a different location over the summer, right, about 8 months ago, when I was shooting 300 yards, okay? So yesterday and today, I've been shooting from 25 yards out to 200 yards, and over the summer, I was shooting 300 yards, and I was able to collect some data that kind of confirms everything I just told you guys. So, we're using this AK-47 Wasser, okay? The first shot that put out there, first I went straight to 100 yards, okay? So I went straight to 100 yards. I wanted to, you know, put my bullseye here. I wanted to see, because I really didn't remember what zero I had used on this. I didn't remember where it was. In fact, I thought it might have been a 50-yard zero. I didn't quite remember. But anyway, I went out to 100 yards, put the paper out there, took 3 shots, and it ended up being like the best group that I did over the 2 days. That's these 3 shots here, okay? So at 100 yards, I got 1.5 inches, okay? So a 1.5 MOA. That was my best shot group. So what I did then is I said, okay, great. First of all, I said, okay, let me see how high I am at 100 yards. I'm about 5 inches high, okay, at 100 yards. So then I said, okay, let's see what kind of zero I'm actually using. And I said, okay, I'm pretty sure it's a 50-yard zero. So I put it at 50 yards, I took 3 shots, and it's actually hitting a little bit above my bullseye. That's what the center of the group was. So then I brought it back to 25 yards, I took another 3 shots, and basically that's where my bullseye is. Okay, so I'm using a 25-yard zero. Now, as I was doing this, I kind of recollected the way I had arrived at this zero, I don't know, about 8 months ago, which I think is the last time that I re-zeroed this, okay? So about 8 months ago, what I had done is I went out to, I took a 50-yard zero. So at 50 yards, I was basically in my bullseye. Then I went out to 100 yards, and what I did is I adjusted. Once I got to 100 yards, I saw where I was impacting, and then I said, hey, my AR is usually 4 inches high at 100 yards. I want to be about there with my AK. So I readjusted it so that I was about 4 inches high at 100 yards, and in that process, what it did is it brought me back to a 25-yard zero. It brought me back to a 25-yard zero. Okay, so that's how I arrived at the 25-yard zero. It started off as a 50-yard zero. I wasn't happy with the way it was impacting at 100 yards. I readjusted it, so I was about 4 to 5 inches high, and that gave me the 25-yard zero. Okay. So what I did is I said, you know what, let's kind of confirm. I went, took another 4 shots. Actually, I did a whole bunch of shots, but these, you know, some of this, a lot of times I'm doing groups on top of groups and they get sloppy. But here you go. Over here, this is actually kind of perfect because the other one kind of came in at 5. Now, mind you, I don't have a magnifier on this, which is a major disadvantage. Okay, not having a magnifier on this is a disadvantage because here's the thing: I don't have great eyes or perfect eyes. When I'm looking through this red dot, I see a starburst. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to center the starburst in the, you know, basically in the center of the paper. Because remember, at 100 yards, the entire paper is basically a bullseye. I really can't see the blue here. I just need to kind of cover it up, and then I'm trying to put the equal amount of white around my red dot, okay? So, or around the starburst that I'm seeing. So somebody with better eyes than me will probably do better at this, okay? If I had a magnifier, if I was able to put a magnifier behind this, I'd be probably doing a lot better, right? So ideally with the perfect AK-47, this rear sight becomes a Picatinny rail. This moves onto a Picatinny rail over here where the rear sight is, and then the dust cover back here also has a Picatinny rail on it where you can mount a magnifier, and that would be like perfect, you know, back here for eye relief, and that would be fine. You got your red dot here, magnifier back here. That would be perfect. That would be like the ultimate AK-47. I have tried putting the side mount over here with like a magnified scope. What I have found, right, when I had the side mount, basically my accuracy had decreased. Okay, so I get better accuracy with the optic mounted on the gas tube clamped onto the barrel versus on top of the side mount, because for whatever reason, I mean, with the side mounts that I've used, if I go to it and I push down on it, I can see that the side mount moves. So I don't think that the side mounts are as stable as being on top of the gas tube. Now, people have told me, well, if you get, you know, this particular brand or that particular brand, it's better. Well, you know, with the brands I've tried, compared to this. This is the one that basically gets me, I don't know where I was, that gets me the 1.5-inch group at 100 yards. So I'm staying with that, okay? But all I'm saying is if I could put a magnifier behind it, I'd be shooting better groups, okay? So anyway, I took this one out there at 100 yards. And this is kind of perfect. Came in at exactly 4 inches above my bullseye, which is exactly where I want to be. So if I put the dot here, I can hit here, or if I put it on the mouth, I hit like right between the eyes. So that's kind of perfect. 5 shots here. It looks like I had 1 flyer over there. I mean, the total group was 3 1/4 inches. If I discount the 1 flyer, they're at 2 inches. Okay, so again, it's very accurate. AK-47. I remember when people used to down talk the washers, the Romanian washers, but it's a good one. So we did that. Then what I did is from there, I went straight out to 200 yards. Okay, so you know what? Let's go to 200 yards. Now at 200 yards, I remember, mind you, when I'm shooting these targets here, I'm able to kind of stand the boxes up, put a rock in there, and flat rock in there, and this sits perfectly. With these bigger papers, I didn't have a stand out there to hold this, so I had to kind of put it up against my backstop, so you can see some of the, the bullets went through, but the holes that you see on the paper is basically the bullet splatter. Once it hits the backstop, rocks and stuff will come back through the paper. But actually, this was the first one I did. So at 200 yards, and mind you, the whole point of this video now here is what we're checking is we want to check and see where our second zero is. Is that actually at 200 yards where we expect it? So at 200 yards, I can see that I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I'm basically averaging over here about 7 inches low. Okay, so in reality, I'm actually coming in at 200 yards. I am coming in about 7 inches low. But here's the thing with at 200 yards, I really can't see the bullseye. I'm kind of trying to anchor to the center of the paper. So realistically, you put your red dot here, you're going to be impacting a little bit lower, at least with my setup. Okay, with my setup, the way now here's the thing with this red dot sits, I don't know, what's my height over bore here? Check that out. So my height over bore is about 2.5 inches. Okay, if you have a side rail mount, and by the way, you can see the scratches from the or the paint that's come over here. So obviously, at some point, I had a side rail mount on here. But if you have a side rail mount on here, it's going to be higher because it usually is going to end up being almost 3.5 inches high. Because it basically comes up a lot higher. So I think if you're using a side rail mount, I think that you're going to, I think that's with side rail mount and a 25-yard zero, I think you're going to get a lot closer to a perfect second zero at 200 yards. Okay, so that I think that I think that's the reason why I was a little bit lower at 200 yards compared to other people who have tested this, and they seem to get a little bit closer to that, to the bull, to the center at 200 yards. Now I did it again. Now this I did yesterday. I shot it again today, and I shot this twice. All right, so I did 2 groups. First is the black one. I'm just trying to blow this thing. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then one up here, 5. Okay. So the first group was about, in black, was the center of that is about 4 inches low. Okay, and then the second group that I did here in red was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's more centered, so that's about 2 inches low. Okay, so it's pretty reasonable to say that I'm pretty close you know, I'm not like a perfect second zero at 200 yards. I'm, you know, between all, I'd say I'm about 3 to 4 inches low at 200 yards. Now, I said to myself, hey, it seems like, you know, with the 25-yard zero, my second zero is probably maybe 150 yards. So then I shot, what I did is the final group that I did today, I took this out to, I took this to 150 yards, right? So when I shot this at 150 yards, basically from the center of the bullseye, now I'm actually about, the centers, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at 150 yards. So now my center's at about 5.5 inches high. So it seems that with the 25-yard zero on this rifle here, with the way I have it set up, at 150 yards, I'm like 5.5 inches high. I'm closer to the 200 yards. Okay, so the true second zero on this might be, let's say, like 175 or 185 yards, right? So that might be my true second zero. I don't want to overthink it, because the limitation here is my eyesight, right? The fact that I don't have a magnifier, you know, with a diopter in the back where I can adjust the focus and give me a crisp red dot, you know, and the to magnify everything. That's the weakest point in this testing that I have done. My eyesight, because I'm not using a magnifier. Okay, so with what I got here, I think that it's pretty. I mean, I'm pretty close to saying I can say that with a 25-yard zero. I don't have a perfect second zero at 200 yards, but I'm pretty close. Okay, which gives me a lot of confidence in all this stuff over here. Now, I did shoot. I do have a video up, and you can look it up. Just look up my channel name, AK-47. At 300 yards shooting, and when I shot this at 300 yards, I had to look up the video because I don't remember exactly what I did. That's one of the reasons why I post these videos, so I can refer back. And so when I shot this gun at 300 yards, I had a 20-inch group, and my drop was about 24 inches, right? So about 2 foot. So again, with a 2-foot drop at 300 yards, where are you? 2 foot, 2 foot, 2 foot. Oh, here you go, 24 inches. So what I said over here with at 300 yards, I basically said, put it to the forehead, right? Put it to the forehead, right at the top of the forehead, and basically that'll kind of drop it center mass over here. Even if you put it top of the head, because remember, your red dot's huge, right? At 300 yards, your red dot's pretty big. So if you put this way up here, right, it's gonna kind of drop it a little too high. So that's why I'm saying put it at the forehead. So basically you're gonna end up like right about there. All right, so so based on the shooting that I did at 300 yards, this seems to be kind of falling in line. So there's it's not going to be perfect, but it seems like it's pretty close. Okay, so with AK-47 25-yard zero, we're about 4 inches high at 100 yards. Point of aim, point of impact to the chest at 200. Hold at the forehead at 300. Hold on top of the head at 350. At 400, half the height of a man. Right, that's your holdover. And at 400, at 400 it's half the height of a man. And at 450, it's the full height of the man. That's your holdover. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. And like I said, if you are using an AK with the side rail mount and the scopes on top of it, that's going to shift some of this information a little bit, I think. So if you've got any data on that, put it below in the comments. I'd love to look through that. So thanks for watching. Hope you all enjoyed the video. Drop some comments below, and I'll talk to you all soon.